Hello and welcome to this reed making video. Today I'm going to be showing you how to put the binding onto a reed, and I'm working here on some reeds that I was preparing a couple of days ago. These are going to be for the Spanish Alto Shawm, and they have been sitting here on the drying rack for a few days so that the cane has completely dried out. So in the next couple of videos, which I've already made, I'll show you the previous steps, how I formed this, and before that how I shaped the cane, and that was all done with cane that had been soaking for several days. So then, having formed it, it's been sitting here drying out. Occasionally I come and tighten the wires, and I'm going to tighten them one more time before we put the binding on. So it's going on the mandrel, and I'm just going to use the pliers, and if you watch my other videos this process will become very familiar. We pull away, take any slack so you get a little triangle, and then release and twist. Pull, release, twist. Now the ends of those wires are a bit too long at the moment, so I'm going to take my wire cutters and I'm just going to trim them down. I usually leave them about 3 or 4 turns or twists long. So let's just do that. I think I've mentioned in another video that these ends on these wires can be quite sharp, so watch your fingers on them while you're working on other things. Now eventually those ends will get bent down, but for now they're staying sticking out. The other thing I'm going to do before I start is just to put a little bit of water on the mandrel. So I'm going to dip it in my water jug there for a moment, and there's just a drop on the end, and that will just help the reed now to stick on there when I'm twisting, because I'm going to want to put quite a lot of tension on this so that it's nice and tight and stays done up. Now the thread that I'm using is waxed linen thread, and I get it from the Bagpipe Suppliers shop up in Edinburgh. It comes in either yellow or black, which is why so many of my reeds have these bright yellow bindings on them. You can use obviously bassoon thread if you prefer, and what I tend to do is I put the actual bobbin down on my lap and just let it roll around there while I'm working so it doesn't fall on the floor. And the first thing we're going to do is just to make a little knot in the end of the thread. I hope you can see that. I'll try and get it in front of the dark background. A little knot in the end, which I'm going to put around the bottom wire, and I'll tighten that up. So we've got the end sticking out there. I might pull it through a bit so that end's a bit shorter. I'm going to push that end up so it's sitting against the cane just above the wire, and I'm going to take one turn just above that bottom wire, and that turn is going to go over the end and secure it. So now I can fold that wire up, and my other turns are going to go over it, but that very first one is sitting underneath. So that's now secure. If I was to let go, it's not going to come off the reed. So that was tied around the wire. The loose end goes upwards. You take one turn around the reed so that you're going over that loose end, and then bend the wire. And then all I'm going to do is keep the tension on with the fingers in the back, the little fingers of this right hand, turn the mandrel with my left, and just lay this thread down as it goes round so that it's sitting and going over the top of the end of the wire there. We're burying that. Each turn sits just right next to the one before, making a nice smooth edge. We've got to the top of the wire and fallen off it, that's fine, we'll carry on. We're going to go all the way up to the next wire. This is another of those processes that I usually do much closer to my body, but I'm doing it out in front of me today so that you can see it through the close-up camera. So you're going to see a lot of this in this video, twisting and turning, gripping with the bottom fingers, aligning the thread with the thumb, and this finger's just kind of keeping everything together, smoothing it down as I go. So one of the reasons I use the waxed linen thread is that it doesn't need varnishing or painting with anything. it forms an airtight seal just with the thread and the wax. So you don't have that smell of nail varnish or whatever in your workshop, and it's one less step. You don't have to wait for it to dry or anything. I say that is true for the Shawman Kirtle reeds. I do varnish some of my Krumholtz reeds because they have some slightly longer, less reliable seams on them. But these I can just bind and they're done. So I got up to the top wire there and I've started coming back down again. Sorry, I did that without even realising what I was doing. So you get up to the second wire and then I'm building a second layer on top of that, working my way back down, and we're going to go all the way past the bottom wire and beyond it a little way. I started off with that bobbin on my lap. It's now actually just dangling loose as I work, kind of unthreading itself. It's the other advantage of waxed thread, is that that doesn't go all over the floor while you're working. Right, we've got down as far as the first wire, and we're going to go straight past it onto the bit of tube at the bottom. And I'm going to leave a couple of millimetres of cane sticking out the bottom, and I'm going to start back on top of myself, back up towards that first wire again making a second layer. Until I get back to that wire, and that is where we're going to stop. So that's the first half of the process done. We've now got a double layer of thread, all the way up from the first wire to the second, back down again, all the way down to within a millimetre or two of the bottom of the cane, and then back to that first wire again. Now I'm going to tie that off so that while I'm making the crisscross Turk's head bit, it doesn't all come undone. Now I'm going to do that by putting a knot in, and I make this knot by taking the free bit of thread and just twisting it and putting that twist over the wire. Sorry, over the reed. Shouldn't have said over the wire because that's now got stuck. This doesn't usually happen. This is because I'm doing it in front of a camera, isn't it? There we go. That's now coming down, and that's going to sit where that first wire is and pull tight. And if it's pulled tight, it'll probably just sink in between the other threads. I'll do that again. I'll try and not get myself in a kerfuffle. Let's have a bit more slack. There we go. So I'm taking the free end, a couple of fingers, twist it around and put it over the reed, and then pull and try and get it to sit in that same place, roughly where that bottom wire is. Pull nice and tight. Okay, phase one complete. While we're here, I'm going to fold down these top two wires now out of the way. Okay, so to make the Turk's head, it is just literally a case of taking that up a bit and down a bit and making waves. So to start with, I don't worry too much about where this is sitting, and it's a bit narrower than you might end up. Let's see if I can do it that way around so you can see a bit more. I'm just going up and down, and then gradually I'm kind of seeking out the gaps in that pattern where there's not much going on and trying to lay the thread through it. And as it gets bigger, I can maybe fall into a bit more of a regular pattern. The main function of this Turk's head bit is just to give you something to hold on to when you're putting the reed on and off the instrument. So it needs to be relatively secure, but because we put those knots in first, it's not actually holding anything together. So if it does come undone, as long as you did those knots, your reed is not going to fall apart. You'll just end up with no Turk's head. Okay, when that looks about the size you want, then it's exactly the same knot again. Let's have some slack to finish off, and I'm going to lie the knots down above the Turk's head. So twist over the top. I always do two. I'm going to lie that above the Turk's head, and I'm going to pull so hard it's going to sink in between the others. And one more time, twist over the top. And then I'm just going to cut the end as close as I can get and just smooth it down with my finger. And there we have the unfinished reed that we started with in the previous video. So if you haven't seen it yet, go and have a look. The previous video was how to finish off an unfinished reed. This is your unfinished reed ready to go. So the next one we're going to be looking at forming the reed and putting the wires on, and then the one after that is shaping the cane, so starting all the way back at Galveston profile to bassoon cane. Hope to see you then. Thanks for watching.